the diplomat's arrival, the atmosphere inside the grand hall was electric, thick with tension. Alien leaders from across the galaxy sat in their respective seats, eyes scanning the room, murmurs of disagreement filling the air. The long-awaited peace talks had begun, but no one believed it would last. Wars had raged for years between factions, each one too proud to back down. The doors of the hall suddenly opened with a low hum, and the noise stopped. All eyes turned toward the entrance. A figure stepped inside, surrounded by quiet whispers. The diplomat from Earth had arrived, tall, with a calm expression and a presence that seemed to fill the entire room. He walked with the poise of someone who had seen conflict but was not afraid of it. His face was serene, but his eyes were sharp, taking in every detail around him. He was not alone. Behind him, standing like a silent sentinel, was a human bodyguard. Unlike the diplomat, the bodyguard was not in a suit of diplomacy, but wore a dark, combat-ready uniform. His expression was unreadable, and his presence immediately caused a stir among the alien leaders. The bodyguard stood still, hands clasped behind his back. He said nothing, made no move to acknowledge anyone. He simply waited. His mere existence seemed to hold the room in a state of uneasy curiosity. The diplomat paused in the middle of the room, surveying the gathered leaders. Then, with a smooth gesture, he raised his hand to silence the murmurs. "Let us begin," he said, his voice low and steady. Carrying across the room, the alien leaders exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing, unsure of what to make of this human diplomat and his bodyguard. The room was filled with the quiet hum of alien voices speaking in hushed tones, debating whether this human could be taken seriously. Earth brings its representative, the diplomat continued, his voice cutting through the chatter. But it is not just my words that will define the outcome of this meeting. The tension in the room shifted as the diplomat turned slightly to face his bodyguard. The crowd watched as the diplomat spoke again. 3 minutes, the diplomat said. That's all it will take. The alien leaders blinked in confusion. 3 minutes. What did that mean? There was no explanation, no elaboration, just a statement that hung in the air. The bodyguard, standing just behind the diplomat, did not move, but his eyes locked onto the crowd. His expression remained stoic, unreadable. The only movement in his posture was a slight shift, like he was preparing for something. "What do you mean by that?" asked one of the alien leaders, a tall, reptilian creature with a voice like gravel. His eyes were suspicious, calculating. "Are you implying that you plan to end this war in 3 minutes?" The diplomat did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked over at the bodyguard, who made no move but seemed to acknowledge the question with a barely perceptible nod. "Yes," the diplomat said simply. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The room erupted in disbelief. Some alien leaders scoffed, others exchanged confused glances. The idea of a single human ending a galactic war in mere minutes was laughable. They had been fighting for decades, centuries. Even how could a human, let alone one bodyguard, change that? The diplomat allowed the chaos to unfold, his calm demeanor unshaken by the questions and laughter. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice smooth and confident. "It's simple," he said. "You underestimate us. You see, our kind is weak, as primitive. But I brought a solution. This human bodyguard will be the key to ending this conflict." The crowd's laughter died down, replaced by a deep, confused silence. "You think one human can end this?" A voice rang out from the back of the room. The speaker, a towering insectoid alien, stepped forward. "We have fleets, armies, weapons. Beyond your understanding. How do you expect to stop us with your bodyguard?" The diplomat turned, his eyes calm, unwavering. He raised a single hand, indicating his bodyguard. "He's not here to fight. He's here to show you that this conflict has already ended." For a moment, no one spoke. The alien leaders exchanged looks, each of them trying to make sense of what the diplomat had said. It was clear that the diplomat's confidence was unsettling, but more than that, it was also intriguing. The bodyguard, who had been silent throughout, moved slightly. His gaze was intense as he surveyed the room. His posture relaxed but ready. A soft hum filled the air as the diplomat raised his hand again. "The war ends in 3 minutes," he repeated, "and the human bodyguard will be the one to make sure of it." At that moment, a ripple of unease passed through the room. It wasn't fear but curiosity, uncertainty, and a growing realization that this wasn't just a simple peace talk. The human diplomat and his bodyguard were here for something far greater than anyone had expected. The next few moments would determine everything. The bodyguard's silence. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension. Alien leaders exchanged wary glances, each uncertain about how to proceed. The diplomat's claim was impossible to ignore. His words had been bold, too bold for a human, but there was a certain weight to them. And, even more intriguing, his bodyguard had not moved a muscle. Nira, a reptilian diplomat from the rival faction, sneered and crossed her arms. "You speak of ending the war, human. But what makes you think we will listen to your weak species? We have the power to crush your Earth in seconds." Her words rippled through the room like a shockwave, but the diplomat did not flinch. He glanced briefly at his bodyguard before addressing Nira with quiet confidence. "We are done with war. You will see why." Nira laughed, a dry, menacing sound. "And how do you plan on stopping us, human?" The bodyguard remained unmoving, his sharp eyes scanning the room, seemingly taking in every detail. It was as if he was waiting for something. His calmness was unnerving, like a predator biding its time. Nira's eyes narrowed. "You think a single human is enough to stop us? You don't understand our power. We've been at this for centuries. You've been at war with us for over 100 years. Do you really believe one bodyguard will change everything?" The diplomat's eyes met the bodyguard's, and without a word, the bodyguard took one step forward. The room froze. His movements were deliberate, controlled, no hasty gestures. His presence alone made everyone uneasy. The bodyguard didn't speak. His silence was more commanding than any speech could have been, in a single motion. The bodyguard unclipped a sleek device from his side and held it before him. The quiet whir of energy surrounded him as he pressed a button. A holographic display flickered to life above the device, showing a detailed map of the galaxy. The map zoomed in, focusing on the heart of the aliens' military operations. Nira raised an eyebrow. "What is this?" The bodyguard didn't respond. He turned his eyes back to the crowd. The room's atmosphere shifted again. The calmness in his expression was terrifying. No one had ever seen a human stand this still, this confident, this powerful. Then the diplomat spoke again. "In exactly 3 minutes, the war ends. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon of yours will be shut down." There was an audible gasp from the council members, and a quiet ripple of confusion passed through the room. The leaders looked at each other, unsure whether to laugh or to draw their weapons. A bodyguard shutting down entire fleets. Impossible. Nira took a step toward the diplomat. Are you suggesting that this human somehow has control over our entire fleet? That he can override our systems with a simple device? The diplomat nodded slowly. That's exactly what I am suggesting. The room fell silent again, this time with a deep, heavy discomfort. The tension felt like an electric current, the kind. Before a storm, Nira's sneer faded as the reality of the diplomat's words began to sink in. How could a human bodyguard, barely a fighter compared to their warriors, have such an ability? How could he have access to the most secure systems in the galaxy? And why did he stand there without even flinching? She turned to the bodyguard. What are you waiting for, then? Still, he did not speak. His hands remained at his sides, steady and calm. The high-ranking leader from the insectoid faction, who had been sitting silently until now, leaned forward, his antennae twitching. What makes you so sure this will work, human? The diplomat smiled faintly. Because it's already done. Nira laughed bitterly. You expect us to believe that? You expect us to just hand over everything to you because you say so? The bodyguard raised his hand slowly and pressed another button on his device. A hum filled the air, again this time louder. The alien leaders watched in disbelief as the map flickered again. A new set of data appeared: coordinates, military, positions, weapons, caches, fleet movements all frozen in place. A high-pitched tone echoed throughout the chamber. All the alien leaders froze, staring at the map. Their communication systems had been completely disabled. Their fleets, once so confident in their strength, were now rendered immobile. It took several seconds before anyone spoke again. This time, it was a different voice, one filled with fear. What did you do? The bodyguard lowered his hand and finally spoke. I didn't do anything. Your systems did it. I just gave them the command. The entire room went still. The bodyguard hadn't just stopped their fleets. He'd shut down their entire command structure. Every single alien leader looked at one another, realizing the full impact of what had just happened. One human bodyguard had turned the tide of the war without raising a finger, without firing a shot. The diplomat looked at the alien leaders and spoke one final time. The war is over. You've lost. There was no need for further words. The room was full of stunned silence as the realization dawned on everyone. The galaxy's deadliest war had ended in less than 3 minutes. And it was not through brute force. It was through control, precision, and the power of a human bodyguard who had proven in one single moment that even the mightiest armies could fall without a fight. The first threat. The room remained in stunned silence. The map had gone dark. The alarms had stopped blaring. The alien leaders, once filled with confidence and pride, were now unsure of what to do. Their fleets were frozen. Their weapons were disabled. The human bodyguard had done the impossible and they were left powerless. But then, in the back of the room, a voice broke the silence. You think this is over? A tall, armored alien, one of the most influential commanders from the enemy faction, stepped forward. His voice filled with venom. You've taken control of our systems, but you've forgotten something crucial. We still have forces you cannot reach. We still have power. He slammed his fist on the table, and we will fight to the last. The human bodyguard didn't flinch. He simply stood still, his eyes never leaving the commander. I don't need your fleets, the bodyguard said, his voice quiet but filled with authority. You've already lost. But the commander wasn't done. His expression twisted into a sneer. You think your tricks will work forever? You think a single human can change everything. You are weak. Your people are weak. The bodyguard remained unmoved, his gaze steady, almost indifferent. The commander continued, his anger growing. You have no idea who you're dealing with. We are the Cols, the conquerors of 100 galaxies. We don't bow to anyone, least of all a diplomat and his weakling bodyguard. The room grew tense as the Cols commander turned his attention to the diplomat. You've humiliated us, and for that you will pay. You may have won this small battle, but we will end you. The diplomat raised a hand, a calm smile playing on his lips. You are welcome to try. Without warning, the commander lunged forward, drawing a large plasma blade from his side. He charged at the human bodyguard with lightning speed, his weapon crackling with energy. The room gasped in shock, but the bodyguard didn't move. In one fluid motion, the Cols commander swung the blade downward, toward the human's head, aiming for a deadly strike. But the bodyguard raised his hand and, without breaking his stance, caught the blade mid-air. Time seemed to freeze. The energy from the blade hissed and sparked against the bodyguard's hand, but his grip didn't budge. The Cols commander pulled back, furious. You dare touch my weapon. The bodyguard's expression remained stoic, unaffected by the force of the blow. He pushed the blade aside with minimal effort, knocking the commander back with a swift motion of his hand. The commander stumbled but regained his footing, his eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible, ... You're not the first to underestimate humans, the bodyguard said simply. The room was still. The entire council watched, stunned by the speed and precision of the human. The Cols commander had expected an easy victory, but now he was beginning to realize just how wrong he was. The bodyguard's voice, calm and unwavering, echoed in the silent chamber. Your war ends here, not with your weapons, not with your force, but with your understanding that humans are not to be taken lightly. The Cols commander stood, breathing heavily, his grip on his plasma blade trembling. The realization hit him hard. He had just witnessed something that no alien had ever expected. Human strength wasn't just in numbers or power. It was in the ability to stand firm when everything around you was meant to break you, and for the first time, the Cols commander understood. The war had truly ended. Not because the fleets were gone or the weapons were disabled, but because the human bodyguard had proven something greater. There was no fight left to give. The room remained silent, the tension still hanging heavy in the air. The Cols commander slowly lowered his weapon, his eyes no longer filled with defiance but with reluctant respect. The others, too, began to grasp the weight of what had just transpired. The diplomat stood and spoke, his voice ringing with finality. This is the power of humanity, and this is how we end wars. As the last of the tension in the room began to dissipate, the Cols commander turned to the other alien leaders, his voice low. It is over, for now. And with that, the war was over. Not because of fleets or bombs, but because one human bodyguard had stood against the greatest threat and proved what humanity could do in just a few minutes. Everything had changed. The truth unveiled. The room remained heavy with silence after the Cols commander's reluctant surrender. His once proud demeanor had cracked, revealing a deep, unsettling realization. Humanity was not the weak, powerless species the galaxy had believed them to be. The bodyguard's skill, precision, and calmness had torn through that perception. Like a knife through paper, the alien leaders stood in stunned silence. Even the most formidable factions, who had built empires on war and dominance, seemed unsure how to proceed. The diplomat remained seated, his expression unchanging though. His eyes flickered toward the bodyguard. For a moment, their gazes met, silent understanding passing between them. This was the moment they had fought for. Enough, the diplomat said, breaking the silence. The war is over. No more bloodshed, no more death. We have proven that humanity has the strength to end this conflict without a single shot being fired. The alien leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Their fleet had been rendered useless. Their most powerful weapons were neutralized. They had no recourse but to accept the truth. The human diplomat and his bodyguard had achieved the unthinkable. The Coal's commander, still holding his weapon, finally spoke, his voice laced with bitterness. So this is what it has come to. We, the conquerors of galaxies, brought low by a single human. The diplomat stood and faced him. Not a single human, he replied, his voice firm. A human who represents the strength, courage, and intelligence of an entire species. We don't need to conquer. We don't need to destroy. We need to understand. Nera, a leader from the insectoid faction, stepped forward, her antennae twitching with thought. You speak of peace, diplomat, but how can you expect us to trust a species that has been so isolated from the rest of the galaxy for centuries? The diplomat's gaze softened, because we're no longer isolated. The time for division is over. Humanity has the power to bring balance, not through war, but through unity and cooperation. The tension in the room was palpable as the alien leaders absorbed his words. The bodyguard, standing quietly by the diplomat's side, seemed to project an air of quiet authority. His role in the peace talks had been far more significant than anyone had anticipated. And yet, in his calm silence, he had won more than words. Suddenly, a transmission flickered on one of the terminals. The High Observer from the Council of the Cylon, the most powerful race in the galaxy, appeared on the screen. His face was stern, his expression cold. This is unacceptable. The High Observer's voice boomed through the room. A human bodyguard has no place in our galaxy's politics. You humans have already proven to be a threat to the balance we've fought for. This peace is nothing more than a temporary illusion. The diplomat's eyes never wavered as he looked at the screen. Your empire is built on control, but that control is fading. Humans don't need your power to survive. We've always fought for what's right, not for what's easy. The High Observer's face tightened in anger. You do not understand the forces at play. Human, this is far greater than your petty conflicts. This is about survival, dominance, and maintaining order. The diplomat's voice was calm but unwavering. You call it order, we call it oppression. The time for empires is over. For a brief moment, the High Observer's eyes flickered with something akin to uncertainty. He knew the weight of what had just happened. The war was over. Not because of armies or alliances, but because humanity had brought something greater to the table. Understanding, the bodyguard stepped forward, his gaze unwavering as he looked at the High Observer's image on the screen. You've already lost, he said quietly, but the words carried a powerful truth. The High Observer seemed to recoil, his face a mask of shock and anger. But before he could respond, the transmission was cut off. Silence followed, and in that silence, the alien leaders began to speak. We have been blinded by our own power. Nera, the insectoid leader, said slowly, the humans, they have something we do not. A will to act, to change. The Carl's commander, who had been brooding silently, nodded reluctantly. Perhaps, Perhaps it is time for something new. The diplomat smiled, though it was a small, knowing smile. It is time for all of us to evolve. The war is over. Now, we begin the real work, the work of building something greater than ourselves. The bodyguard remained still beside the diplomat. He had said little during the meeting, but his presence was enough. He had done what no army, no weapon could do. He had proved that peace was not just a dream, but a reality that could be achieved when people chose to look beyond their differences and understand one another. The truth of peace, the quiet aftermath of the peace talks, lingered in the air like the calm before a storm. The alien leaders, once filled with pride and ambition, were now unsettled, grappling with the truth of what had just happened. The war, which had seemed endless, had ended not with weapons, but with the power of understanding. That diplomat.com and composed stood at the center of the chamber, his eyes scanning the room. The bodyguard, ever silent, stood beside him. The contrast between the two was striking, one calm and intellectual, the other a silent, powerful force. But together they had achieved what no one thought possible. They had ended the war. The alien leaders were no longer shouting, no longer questioning. Instead, they sat, their faces thoughtful, processing the events. Nera, the insectoid leader, leaned forward, her antennae twitching. Her voice was quieter than before. "We underestimated you. We thought humans were nothing more than simple beings, unable to achieve what we could. But now, I'm beginning to see what you're capable of." The diplomat nodded slowly. "You've seen it. We are capable of peace. We don't need to conquer. We need to understand. That's what humanity is built, on connection, communication, and the belief that there is always a way to solve conflicts." There was a long silence in the room as the alien leaders exchanged glances. Some of them were still resistant, still skeptical, but others, like Nera, were beginning to see the power of the human way. "We've spent centuries building our empires on war," Nera continued, her voice softer now. "We've focused so much on power, on control, but we've forgotten that true strength comes from within, not from domination." The Carl's commander, who had been silent for most of the meeting, spoke up. "I don't know if I can ever accept this. Our ways have been the foundation of the galaxy for so long. To throw them away, it feels like we're losing everything." The diplomat's expression softened. "You're not losing everything. You're gaining something. A future built on cooperation, not war. We all have the chance to build a better galaxy together." The bodyguard, still standing in the corner, took a step forward. His voice was low, but it carried a weight that made everyone in the room stop. "I didn't end this war with my strength. I didn't end it with my weapons. I ended it with a choice to act, to show that peace is possible if we're willing to fight for it." His words hung in the air. The alien leaders, once skeptical of humanity's place in the galaxy, were now questioning their own beliefs. For the first time, they were seeing humans not as the lesser species, but as equal strong, not because of their ability to fight, but because of their ability to choose peace when others would not. The Coles commander's voice was hesitant when he spoke again. "But what happens now? What does the future hold for us?" The diplomat smiled, his eyes meeting the Coles commander's. "Now, we rebuild. We don't just rebuild our governments or our ships, we rebuild our relationships, our trust in one another. We make the galaxy a place where peace is the foundation, not war." The room fell silent again. The weight of the words hung in the air, And for the first time, the alien leaders began to understand. They had been taught their entire lives that war was the only way to resolve conflict. But now they saw that there was another way, a way they had never considered before. The bodyguard turned to the diplomat, his voice calm. "It's time to go." The diplomat nodded. "Yes, the real work begins now." As they walked toward the door, the alien leaders watched them, their expressions a mixture of awe and contemplation. It wasn't over yet. The journey to peace would take time, and there were still many obstacles ahead. But for the first time in centuries, the possibility of a peaceful future didn't seem impossible. And as the doors of the council hall closed behind them, one thought echoed in the minds of the alien leaders. Maybe this is what true strength looks like. The final decision, the Galactic Council chamber, was no longer a place of fear and division, but of uncertainty. The once proud and inflexible leaders now found themselves questioning everything they had believed. The war had ended, but true peace was a fragile thing, one they were unsure of how to maintain. Outside the council building, the vast alien city stretched toward the stars, a silent witness to the unprecedented events that had just unfolded. The Carl's commander, the insectoid diplomat, Nira, and the other alien leaders were left to face the consequences of their choices. The age-old mindset of dominance and control had been shattered not through violence, but through a simple act of understanding and the human bodyguard's calm presence. The diplomat and his bodyguard walked down the long hallway toward the ship that would take them back to Earth. Despite the tension in the air, the diplomat felt an unexpected sense of relief. The hardest part was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. As they reached the ship's boarding ramp, the diplomat turned to his bodyguard. "We did it," he said, though his voice carried the weight of a question. "Yes," the bodyguard replied, his face as calm as ever. "But this peace will require more than just strength. It will require trust." The diplomat nodded, his thoughts drifting back to the council chamber. It was easy to win a battle. It was much harder to win peace. The galaxy's future would depend on how well these leaders embraced the change and whether they could move past centuries of conflict. Back in the council chamber, Nira and the Coal's commander stood in silence, their eyes following the departing human diplomat and his bodyguard. The room was still, the weight of their decision hanging heavily in the air. Nira turned to the Coal's commander, her voice soft but firm. "You saw it. We cannot return to the old ways. What we have now is a chance to build something better." The Coal's commander's gaze hardened, but there was no anger in it, only a quiet resignation. "I've lived my entire life in the belief that power is everything, that war is how we prove ourselves. But now, I'm not sure anymore." Nira stepped closer. "None of us are sure. But that's why we have to try. We've been given a chance. We've seen a different way. One where power doesn't come from domination, but from understanding." The Coal's commander nodded slowly. "Then we'll try. For the galaxy, for the future." Back at the ship, as the diplomat and his bodyguard prepared for takeoff, the diplomat paused. He looked out at the stars, a quiet resolve forming within him. The journey was far from over. The seeds of peace had been planted, but it would take years, decades, even to undo the damage of centuries of war. "Do you think they'll change?" the diplomat asked, turning to his bodyguard. The bodyguard, ever silent, looked toward the stars. "Some will, others will fight it. But the truth is, they've already begun to change. They just don't know it yet." The diplomat smiled softly, the weight of the galaxy's future pressing gently on his shoulders. He had seen the beginning of something extraordinary. But like any journey, this one was only just starting. As the ship's engines roared to life, lifting them into the unknown. The diplomat looked out the viewport one last time. The galaxy stretched before him, vast and full of potential. There was still much to be done, but for the first time, he truly believed that peace was possible. And as the ship sailed into the void of space, the diplomat knew that the greatest battle of all had already been won, not by force, but by choice.